Mainland scholar says universal suffrage not equivalent to direct elections. The government to study the feasibility of rent control, and traffic chaos in Japan following heavy snowfall.
Good evening. A mainland law professor today waded into the controversial political reform discussion in Hong Kong. He said universal suffrage is not the same as direct election. He also ruled out civil nomination of candidates or nominations by political parties in the 2017 chief executive election, saying they don't comply with the basic law. Evelina Leung tells us more.
Speaking at a forum about the Basic Law today, Lei Wong, a law professor at Peking University, explained what exactly entails universal suffrage. Universal suffrage means everyone has the right to vote, he said. Wong added that universal suffrage does not necessarily include direct elections. He also reiterated that according to Article 45 of the Basic Law, the chief executive has to be selected by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee. To include civil or political party nominations would effectively mean amending the Basic Law, he added. As for the Love the Country, Love Hong Kong requirement for the chief executive election candidates, Wong said this means respecting the country, the central government, the National People's Congress, the State Council, the People's Liberation Army Hong Kong Garrison, and the SAR government. The law professor's comments stirred up some concerns. Civic Party lawmaker Ronnie Tong said if the nomination procedure effectively turns the CE election into an indirect election, or if the threshold for nomination is designed to screen out potential candidates, then this will not be true universal suffrage. He said a middle ground has to be found where Hong Kong people can have a say in the nomination process and meet the international requirements of universal suffrage. He said in the long run, the Basic Law should be amended to allow civil nomination or nominations by political parties of CE candidates. But he believes this cannot be done before the 2017 CE election. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
The Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee will publish a consultation document next week. The housing chief said today this will touch upon a comprehensive study of the feasibility of rent control here in Hong Kong. Ronnie Samtani reports.
Unaffordable property prices have forced many Hong Kong residents to rent instead of buying properties in recent years. However, increasing rents have prompted locals to demand that the government bring back rent control. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying previously expressed reservations about the idea. However, Secretary for Housing and Transport Anthony Cheung said today the government will be looking into this possibility. Our biggest concern is how this policy would affect the renters, he said. Cheung vowed the government will do an all-rounded study on the issue, looking into how this policy was carried out in the past in Hong Kong and the outcome, how this policy worked in other countries, and whether it is feasible to implement in the city now. The housing chief also reminded the public that rent control is only a temporary solution to the housing woes the city has been facing. The details of the rent control policy will be unveiled when the Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee publishes a consultation report next week. Rent control is not new in Hong Kong. It was implemented in the 1970s. It regulated the rent increase a property owner could impose on the renter. The owner was required to continue renting the property to the existing tenant upon renewal of the rental contract if the tenant was willing to pay the market price. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
Heavy snow in Japan has led to traffic troubles across the country for the second weekend in a row. In Shizuoka Prefecture, there was bumper-to-bumper traffic on the Tomei Expressway, stretching for 40 kilometers. Some sections of the highway and a number of other motorways were closed to traffic altogether. In Tokyo, many domestic flights were canceled at Haneda Airport after 25 centimeters of snow fell on the city. Bullet train service was also disrupted. And the roof of a shopping arcade collapsed under the weight of snow that accumulated overnight. There were no reports of injuries. Heavy snowfall is forecast through the weekend. A brutal winter storm along the U.S. East Coast has left hundreds of thousands without power and caused a massive vehicle pileup in Pennsylvania that left 30 people injured. The deadly 4-day storm dumped more than 60 centimeters of snow and triggered up to 100 vehicle crashes in Pennsylvania. Ambulances rushed to treat victims and flipped over cars, jackknife tractor trailers, and vehicles that skidded off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The number of storm-related deaths has gone up to 25, and more than 300,000 people are without power. Packing fierce winds and heavy snow, the storm is now blowing north through the mid-Atlantic states, causing over 40,000 flight disruptions.
A lack of rain in the U.S. state of California has triggered the worst drought in nearly a century. And because it supplies half the nation's fresh fruits and veggies, the problem is critical. All over the state, reservoirs are well below the normal water line from baking in the hot desert sun. Experts say large-scale crop losses in California will undoubtedly lead to higher consumer prices. After touring California's drought zone, U.S. President Barack Obama said that federal assistance is on the way in the form of a $956 billion farm bill. A major relief operation is underway in Britain to help those in flood-ravaged communities. Even Princes William and Harry put their royal duties aside to lend a helping hand. In the shadow of Windsor Castle in southern England is where Princes William and Harry were seen helping villagers whose homes are underwater.
Our house is filling up as we speak. It is about a foot in water already, and it'll keep filling.
Having both served in the armed forces, unloading sandbags proved a cinch for the royal brothers. They helped other soldiers tasked with trying to prevent waters from inundating homes after the River Thames burst its banks. Suggesting there's a time and place for everything, the Duke of Cambridge and his younger brother couldn't be bothered with the media. Prince William challenged one reporter to make better use of his time.
What you've been up to? Well, you could come and help instead of having cameras, man.
Prince Harry was equally testy.
How are you enjoying getting stuck in? Not ready when you guys are on.
The princes were not the only royals helping out. Their grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, has sent feed and bedding to farmers whose land has been inundated. Britain needs all the help it can get. This marks the country's wettest winter on record. It wreaked havoc via wide-scale flooding in many areas, leaving residents cut off for weeks or forcing thousands from their homes. According to Prime Minister David Cameron, relief measures are underway.
We are doing everything we can. We are fighting on every front. The military are in there, sandbags are being deployed. We've got the biggest pumping operation in our country's history on the Somerset levels. Everything that can be done will be done to protect people.
But the worst has yet to come. Forecasters are warning that even more severe weather will batter the region throughout the weekend. The news has sent masses scrambling to prepare for more punishing rains and winds.
7 Japanese divers went missing off the Indonesian resort island of Bali yesterday, and rescuers recovered a body today. The Japanese, including 2 instructors, left on a boat yesterday morning for a dive around mangroves in Crystal Bay in the east of the island. Strong winds and heavy rain hit the area. Rescuers, guided by 2 Indonesian skippers from the divers' boat, searched for the missing people. They found the body of a woman thought to be one of the divers. Italy is going to have a new prime minister for the 3rd time in less than a year after Enrico Letta tendered his resignation Friday. Letta resigned after losing the party's confidence in a vote on Thursday. The man who orchestrated Letta's downfall and will take over as head of the Democratic Party is 39-year-old Matteo Renzi, currently the mayor of Florence. Renzi is now poised to become Italy's youngest ever prime minister. He's promising to lead a more ambitious government after Letta had come under criticism over the slow pace of reform. The Democratic Party currently leads a fractious coalition government.
Violence broke out in the Persian Gulf nation of Bahrain yesterday on the 3rd anniversary of a popular uprising. Anti-government protesters blocked roads to villages around the capital city with burning debris. Some even smeared oil on the roads to prevent police from entering. There were reports of rioting and vandalism in the mainly Shiite villages just outside Manama. At least 4 policemen were injured in 2 separate explosions targeting police patrols. Hundreds of youths tried to get to Pearl Square in Manama, the protest hub of a democratic movement that was started back on February 14, 2011. Spearheaded by majority Shiites, the movement seeks political reform and an end to what protesters see as discrimination by the Sunni minority monarchy. Neighboring Sunni-ruled Gulf countries, led by Saudi Arabia, sent troops to Bahrain to help quell the uprising. But the standoff, which sometimes turns violent, is played out on the streets almost daily. Officials say more than 65 people have so far died in the unrest, but rights groups put the death toll higher. And still ahead in our newscast, a pledge of U.S.-Chinese cooperation to combat climate change. The police chief to meet PLA officials over security at the planned central military birth, and final preparations for the